So the Artemis astronaut team has been revealed, and we'd say it's a pretty genius strategy to still announce the team before the end of the current administration. Let's analyze the rationale behind this interesting move. And while we all still celebrate the amazing success of SpaceX's Starship SN8 test flight, what does the mainstream media report instead?
Of course, paint the picture again that an Elon rocket exploded. So what else is happening now at Boca Chica? And meanwhile, we have a double dragon on the ISS. Blue Origin releases a new shiny video of their lobby moonlander, and Dynetics also releases a new video of their cool alpaca moonlander. A lot to cover again this week, so stay tuned.
There's just an overwhelming amount of space news this week, so we have to split the news over 2 episodes. This one here and part 2 on Wednesday. Else the video would have gotten too long. So let's start with the main story, the hilariously timed move to reveal the team of NASA's Artemis astronauts that contains the next people that will walk on the surface of the moon. At a meeting of the National Space Council at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Vice President Mike Pence announced the astronaut team that will return humans back to the surface of the moon for the first time since Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt left the last footprint on the moon in December 1972. Now you might ask, why does this administration announce the cadre of the next moon astronauts now, shortly before the end of the current administration and the start of the next one? Well, behind this is actually quite a genius strategy. This is like a game of chess. Put all the chess pieces where they need to be in order to force the opponent in the next round to do a certain move, which you have foreseen him doing.
And this is exactly what Pence did now by revealing the 18 new moon astronauts. It is a very diverse team consisting of 9 women and 9 men of very diverse backgrounds, skin colors and ethnicities. So basically, when the next administration starts, they won't be able to undo this anymore. Why? Because how would it look if the new administration would cancel a team of such diverse astronauts? That would make them look absolutely not progressive. So therefore, of course, they will have no choice, absolutely no choice, than to leave the 18 Artemis astronauts untouched, which in turn will force them not to cancel the Artemis program. So this move, among other things, will force the next administration to keep the Artemis program going. Yes, a delay of the first landing is highly likely, as the 2024 date would have required more funding for NASA. Even though NASA has the largest budget since 30 years inflation adjusted, with a budget of $24.5 billion for the fiscal year 2021, this is still not enough to make it until 2024, because the human landing system only gets $1 billion instead of the requested $3.5 billion for the year 2021. And this trend will likely continue. We think that NASA's budget will stay flat in the next years. Thus, consequently, of course, the moon landing return date will likely slip to 2025 or 2026. Worst case, 2028. But yes, all in all, an excellent development, we'd say, and really well played by Mike Pence. And please subscribe to our channel, because that would help us tremendously to spread the word about the politics in human spaceflight, and also to continue openly talking about lobbying and corruption in the spaceflight industry. Thank you very much in advance.
Still on the topic of Artemis, we know that currently 3 companies are working on human landers for that program. We have Dynetics with their really excellent alpaca lander, which we would say is our favorite together with Starship. Just last week, Dynetics released a new short video about their lander. The alpaca lander has a very large interior volume, is modular, thus extremely versatile, and most importantly, has a very simple 2-stage approach, where only the fuel tanks are shed before landing, and almost the whole lander ascends again back to the gateway after the landing. So it's almost a 1-stage lander, if not for the shedding of the fuel tanks, but they can be recovered and reused if necessary. Then we of course have SpaceX's moon version of Starship, And we think it's not necessary to go into detail again why this monster is so capable. Just look at the sheer size of this thing. We believe, and some viewers of this channel also, that a double approach of Starship and Dynetics Alpaca would be perfect. Have Starship land large payloads, habitat modules, power systems, pressurized rovers, and have the Alpaca lander land the astronaut. We could even imagine leaving the moon starships on the surface of the moon to serve as the first large habitat shelters. The starships themselves would thus form the backbone of the first moon base. And the Alpaca would bring more and more astronauts down to the surface as the moon base grows. And then we have the third contender for NASA's Artemis moon program, the famous national team. They also released a new video last week. Really shiny and well done, because Blue Origin can't reach orbit yet. So they have to compensate with really well done propaganda videos. So Blue Origin is the leader of the national team, a company that is 1 year older than SpaceX and has managed to not even reach orbit after almost 20 years. While SpaceX has not only reached orbit, but also sent a roster to Mars, carried astronauts to the ISS, is constructing a satellite mega constellation called Starlink, and is also building a gigantic rocket that will fly to the Moon and Mars, which it successfully tested last week. However, even though Blue Origin hasn't even reached orbit yet, they are really good at doing shiny videos, highlighting how awesome their moon lander will be.
They teamed up with Lockheed and Northrop, so only Boeing is missing in this illustrious team of lobbying companies. Now, when we saw this new Blue Origin video, we were quite sad to see Harrison Schmitt endorsing them as if they were the best out of the three contenders. This guy is a legend, one of the two moonwalkers of the last Apollo mission 17, and the only geologist to ever visit the moon. We have the highest respect for him, but seeing him endorse the worst team out of the three makes us, of course, a bit sad. Now, even though the propaganda paints the picture that it's really an awesome idea to have 4 companies work on one single moon lander, we know the reality of why this happened. Because SpaceX is so OP that they have to team up to even stand a chance against them. And of course they know that NASA really likes old school approaches. I mean, their moon lander is basically Apollo 2.0. It is a bigger and more complicated version of the Apollo moon landers. 3 stages instead of 2. Yes, it is safer and somewhat of an upgrade because it's larger and has more interior volume. That is true. But if we compare it to Dynetics Alpaca, it loses, in our opinion, in every single metric. Less interior volume, more complicated architecture, and then this insanely high ladder. Then it is non-modular. The Alpaca's module, for example, can be used as a building block for a moon base or for transforming the habitat into a pressurized rover. Can the lobby lander do that? No. But of course, we all know how government works. It's not about the best approach or what's best for humanity. It's about what pays best and creates the most jobs. The sad reality of governments. And since NASA is a puppet of Congress, they cannot really decide on their own. The national team fully knows that, and that's why, sadly, despite their lander being the worst out of the 3, probably it has the highest chances to actually get chosen by NASA to return astronauts to the moon. Dynetics and SpaceX are way better, and if Starship and the Alpaca would work together, we'd have a moon base by 2025. Yes, moon base by 2025.
Talking of SpaceX, we all know the amazing milestone from last week, the amazing achievement with the Starship SN8 test flight. It was an epic moment and a giant success. Everyone knows that. Only the last part, the landing, wasn't a full success. But this is fully expected, and all the rest of the flight went perfectly, and a lot of valuable data was gathered. So the next test flight with Starship SN9 will highly likely even have a successful landing. But what does the mainstream media do? celebrate this epic achievement, calling it one of the most important days for human spaceflight since the days of Apollo? No, of course not. Instead, let's focus on the explosion part. Let's emphasize that something from Elon has exploded again, because then we get lots of clicks. And as you know, clicks are most important. Yes, we do anything for clicks. Who cares about quality reporting nowadays? We need clicks. There were a few notable exceptions though, such as CNN's headline, who emphasized that it was still a success. Not bad. We are surprised. But most headlines were utterly ridiculous. Yahoo probably wins the crown for bad reporting, painting the picture of a failed test. Facepalm, really. And there are many more like these. The negative reporting far outweighs the positive, as you can guess. Why, you ask? Well, because negativity generates more clicks. Quite simple. Our ape brains are hardwired such as to respond stronger to negative emotions rather than positive ones. The mainstream news media knows this well, and they exploit this not so nice aspect of our funny Stone Age brains.
At Boca Chica, meanwhile, SN9's support structure failed unfortunately, so that SN9 is now leaning against the wall in the high bay. It only contracted minor damage, fortunately, and we suspect that this will be repaired fast, so that SN9 can be transported to the launch pad in order to conduct the next high-altitude flight test. And we think this time we will see a successful landing with the lessons learned from the SN8 flight.
Still on the topic of SpaceX, we have currently a double Dragon on the ISS. Anyways, it's fascinating to have two Dragons docked to the ISS, one being the Crew Dragon capsule of the Crew 1 mission, and the other one being the new Cargo Dragon capsule, which reached the ISS on December 7th, bringing 3 metric tons of supplies to the ISS. Amazing times to see this happening.
And on this occasion, we again would like to thank Starbalks Jarray for helping us with the subtitles. He's an immense help. Thank you very much.
And we would also like to thank Michael Root and Jay Keegan for their awesome work on our website.
And we will also soon launch a blog on our website, thanks to the amazing help of Jay Keegan and Michael Root.
So thanks for watching the JS Space Report, and I would say, on to the future. They're awesome, because it's too long and I cannot say it.
That's why, to the future.
Did anybody know this?
I don't know.
It's
Okay, that was for the part on Wednesday probably.
Yeah.
And for the Monday,
you have
just
to thank your friend. On this occasion, you thank whatsoever.